Okay, so it's 1:30 on Saturday, the 15th of November. And for those who've been aware and noticing, we claimed today as Joy Baker Day for Home Education Freedom, simply because for Joy Baker, a home educating mother back in the 50s and the 60s, who was battling local authorities for the right to be able to educate her children herself, this she won an appeal on that date. And that appeal marked the beginning of the end for with her battle to be allowed to educate her children. She still had a couple of other court dates in respect of her younger children that she had to deal with, but that was the very first time when it was recognized in court that she should be allowed to educate her children. So we claimed the 15th of November as a day where home educators can come together, and it's our day. We can celebrate our freedom to educate. So yeah, I wanted to ask, so today most of our guests that will be joining us are people who are seasoned home educators, people who've seen some of the previous battles for freedom to educate our own children, and have come through it. And so I just thought it was really important to bring back some of those conversations to discuss how did we handle that back in the day. So anyway, I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. So first of all, my name is Juliet English. I home educated for 27 years. We're just coming to the end now. I say coming to the end because I can't let go. And I've absolutely loved home educating. It's meant so much to me, to our family, even in my own personal growth. And so I will continue to defend the rights of parents to educate their children in a way that works best for those children, and that freedom. I have 7 children. I run a couple of other things. I'm with we have a website called streams.education, which is a supportive network. I run a conference for home educators every year in May called the Learn Free Conference. I'm very involved in all sorts of other activities, connecting nationally and internationally with other home educators and other home educating networks to talk about the importance of this freedom to be able to educate your children in a way that works best for you. So, Michelle, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Michelle Zahir. I am a current home educator. Been home educating for just over 6 years now. Um, he's now a teenager, so it's getting interesting. Um, I'm also one of the co-owners of Educational Freedom, which is one of the various home education information and support services, um, amongst a billion other hats. And I think that's enough for now.
Oh, really? I want to say Michelle is a phenomenon. She's a force of nature. And she's
Okay,
doing
I'll add a
so
few more
much.
bits then. I'll add a
She's
few
doing
more bits
so
in there.
much behind the
So,
scenes to really fight for our freedom to home educate in this country. So,
so yes, I'm also the lead on the current Stop the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill campaign, with many other people helping me in the background. And people may know now that we have a debate for the petition. If you look on the Withdraw the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill petition, you will see it's my name on it. I set that one up and we got it over 166,000. We have the debate on the 1st. So we want everyone to fight for their freedoms now, like people have fought for the freedoms before us, which means us getting in touch with our MPs and getting them to turn up and speak for us. And continue the fight so that as we can enjoy home education now because others fought before us, those that come after us can still enjoy home education.
yeah. Yes, exactly.
I'll pass on to Alison now.
Yes.
Hi, my name's Alison Sauer. I've been involved in home education since 1999. I home educated both of my children, one of them up to A level and the other one up to the start of secondary school, because that's what she chose to do. And I've been involved in the politics of home education right from the get-go, because I came from the politics of maternity services, and it was quite an easy transition, I can tell you, because it's all about parental rights and taking care of the best interest of your children.
Empowering of parents.
Exactly,
Yeah.
100%. I am the chair of the Centre for Personalised Education, where we support alternative education and we support research into alternatives, and we criticise the mainstream. So it's taken a bit of a sleep at the moment since COVID. We all got very, very exhausted during COVID, but we will be back. And I do lots of other things, wear lots of other hats. You'll see me on the lives with Michelle and Juliet. I'm also the secretary of Homeschooling Europe. So Juliet's also in Homeschooling Europe. So we have an overview of how home education looks in the whole of Europe as well. So it's some of the comparisons are quite interesting. So I'm around about in my day-to-day life. I'm actually a SEND specialist, and I deal with EHCPs and supporting families who have children with disabilities, whether they home educate or have their children in school. So I kind of have that angle on me as well, which enables me to have that, to see things through that lens as well. In particular, this massive number of new to home education home educators. The vast majority of the children have some kind of SEND, whether it's been identified or not, or mental health problems, or both. So it has been quite a rocky road the last 5 years, I would say, Michelle and Juliet, as far as home education is concerned, not least because of all these attacks, but also because of the changing nature of the people who are, through no decision of their own or choice of their own, are actually having to home educate.
Yeah, and I think this is where we're finding that it kind of has muddied the waters a little bit in terms of the debate around home education, is because home education is such an interesting phenomenon, and it is an amazing thing when people start home educating by choice, when they make a positive choice for their families. But that's not to say that if your child has had difficulty in school due to their SEND, it's not to say it can't be a positive choice as well. It might just take a little bit longer for the family to realize actually that was a positive choice.
Yeah.
And so I think we all end up in the same place if we are willing to sort of embrace that. But I want to talk just a little bit as an intro about Joy Baker. So Joy Baker, she was raising her children in the 50s. That's a picture over there. And she had 7 children. She just decided she didn't want to send her children to school. She wasn't particularly aware of laws around the matter. She just didn't see the point of school. And unfortunately, the local authority didn't quite agree with her. So they started knocking on the door, and that started off a whole long conversation. Well, not conversation, but a back and forth communication with letters, and then court action. Her children were forcibly removed one night from their home. And she just had to really stand firm and fight. And she had absolutely no community whatsoever, like we do today. We don't, we have all these networks. Joy was not connected in with those networks. She was very much a woman of principle, a very determined woman, who did not see why it was the concern of anyone else how she educated her children. And I'm hoping we can pull out some quotes from her book. So she wrote a book in 1964 called Children in Chancery. And this book, she's incredibly articulate, and she makes her points really, really well. Very eloquent arguments. And so if you could get hold of her book, if you were lucky enough to get hold of it, it was so inspiring to read her arguments and to understand where she was coming from. And she quickly saw right through the whole system. And the point was actually not necessarily that the children received suitable education, but that they were actually just, they wanted them in a building that was called a school, whether it was best for the children or not. And this book went out of print, became incredibly rare and expensive if you could find a copy. But just recently, her book has become available again. It is back in print. You can find it on Amazon. So I just want to encourage you, if you can get hold of it, that's the book. It's quite easy to find on Amazon, and you can have a copy in your hands today to read her story for yourself. So I just want
And just to add to that, she won't be blowing her own trumpet, but Juliet wrote the new foreword for the book. So
yes, yeah, there is a foreword by me. So I just want to talk a little bit here about I want to see if there's anything, a good quote. It's full of good quotes, which I pulled out my one copy, which was fully underlined with all of them, and then I got myself a new copy, so it's not all underlined. So, but yeah, it's just, I think many parents, this message resonates still today. There's nothing changed about the way local authorities are behaving, and Joy's experience with her local authority. So I really would encourage you, if you can get your hands on a copy, go for it, get it, and read it. And I hope it will really just encourage you to understand why it's so important to stand up to the kind of bullying and harassment that people experience from authorities. Yeah, I want to then also just talk a little bit about the history of some of the battles we have had in the UK around home education. And Alison, I mean, you would be aware of most of them. Do you want to give us a bit of a timeline?
Okay, so I think the first battle that was won was back in 1985. Now that sounds like an awfully long time ago. So leading up to that point, in the late 70s, early 80s, we had the Harrisons, who were, if you were like, they were like the successors to Joy. They had very dyslexic children who, and Jeff, the husband, he was very dyslexic as well. And they had the same kind of battles Joy had. They were in court, all of those kinds of things. And as a result of their years and years of court battles, we ended up with a definition of what a suitable education was. And that's really quite important, because that means that's the thing that means that we can say our education's fine. It doesn't look like school, but it's still fine because it's suitable. And here's the piece of law that says that. So we'll see. That comes into all the arguments all the time that we have now, and that piece of legislation said, that piece of case law said, that an education is suitable if it enables a child to live in a civilized society. And moving forward a little bit, a few years later, we had a case that wasn't actually to do with home education, but it was to do with education that didn't look like a traditional school. And it was a Jewish education, Orthodox Jewish education. And the ruling said a suitable education was one that fits the child for the society of which they grew up, but didn't stop them living outside of that society. So if you can imagine anybody who lives in an alternative society or a non-mainstream society, following their religious or their cultural norms, but being able to still fill in forms and go and live elsewhere if they want to do so. That's our current definition of suitable. Moving forward to 1985, the massive battle with legislation that we had was we finally got deregistration on demand. This is what's at very great risk in this bill. We've had deregistration on demand since 1985, and we need to keep it. We really do need to keep it, because that is the bit that respects the fact that the parents have the responsibility for the education of their children, which is how it is in law here and in some other countries as well, like Italy. So it's our responsibility to educate our children. We can choose to hand over that responsibility to the local authority, but we don't have to. Then moving forward, several, rumblings and things like that. And we come up to 2009. And 2009, we had the most dreadful, awful report done. So it was the last Labour government, not this Labour government. They decided that these pesky home educators needed controlling. That's my interpretation, but I think the rest of you are fairly sympathetic with that interpretation. They did a report, an independent review of home education led by a man called Graham Bagman. So when
Very
everybody says stuff,
appropriately named madman.
well, I went to see him twice during this process, and my daughter just completely changed his name in her brain, and she used to call him Mr. Naughty, and it's just stuck in our household. He's always called Mr.
Yeah,
Naughty now.
yeah, that's a bad man.
Exactly. And he produced a report in January 2009, in July 2009, July 2009, and it was an absolute travesty. He'd ignored everything that he'd seen. He ignored all the evidence. He spoke to probably 1,000 to 2,000 home educating
That's so
families.
strange. They never do that.
No, but
They never ignore the evidence. I mean, what are you talking about?
I know. I was so determined that he should actually get to the nub of the case that I helped to make sure that he could speak to all these people. And he spoke to all these people and then ignored everything they said. And he went off with the thing that he wanted to do, which was, access to people's homes and regulation. And it looks awfully like some aspects of this bill, let's just say. Roll forward to 2010 and we had a general election. And what happened in the general election was something called the wash-up, which doesn't necessarily happen these days. But in those days, you could just call a general election on a whim. Then Prime Minister could just go, nah, don't want to do it anymore. Time for an election. And that's kind of what happened. And so in May 2010, we had a general election. And so there was a lot of scrabbling. And this piece of legislation, which was kind of roughly at the stage we're at now with this one, possibly slightly earlier, it got, they have to make a decision as to what they're going to put through, because everything gets chucked off the books if the government changes, right? So everything gets thrown out. So they decided that one of the bargains they were going to have was they were going to ditch this bill. So they ditched the, what was it called? The Children's Schools and Families Bill, I think it was. And they ditched the bill and we got rid of it. The bill was what was written off the back of the reports that obviously was the outcomes were determined before he actually did it. So we got rid of that piece of legislation, but it's carried on. It's carried on and on and on. And interestingly, I was talking to Joe Merritt the other day, a researcher from Exeter University, and we were talking about the Badman report because it's been absolutely, we've looked at even the numbers in the report are fictitious. So the numbers in the report are fictitious. The numbers in his submissions to Parliament were fictitious. In his submissions to the Education Committee were fictitious. In fact, I was talking to Graham Stewart, who was the MP at the time who was championing home education. I was talking to him a couple of months ago about this fictitious stuff. It was May I went to see him, yeah. And he was saying, I just couldn't believe that the guy could, the gall of him bringing forward all these made up numbers. And so all these numbers made up, and we are still relying on that report today. And you will find that the research that the Department for Education use is very selective, and it includes things like this, which have been, they've been evidenced to be absolutely fictitious. So, removes a foot to remove it from the House of Commons library, but it's going to be a tricky job doing that.
So this is a trend that we continue to see today, a manipulation of figures.
Absolutely.
And a doctoring of figures, selective statistics. It's a tactic purely.
It's not just that though, Juliet. It's also this policy-based evidence making. They have a policy they want to push through. They'll create the evidence. They will do a survey. They will do a piece of so-called research that's absolutely abominable. That doesn't. I direct you to the 2024 safeguarding research on home education, where they have taken cases that we cannot look at. They have purposefully taken reports that are not in the public eye, unlike previous reports, and they have allegedly analysed them. Now, no researchers, independent researchers, can go and have a look at those reports because they are secret. Okay, so they are telling us that they have read all this stuff and this report says this and the research says that. We can't verify it. I can't verify it. And we know that in the past they have misinterpreted reports of harm to children. 50% of the reports that are tagged home education on the NSPCC serious case review library, 50% of them have nothing to do with home education at all. So, you know, that just gives you an idea of how factual and accurate the data is that they're reliant upon. Right, whizzing very quickly through, we've had attack after attack after attack. After that, we've had schools bill after schools bill after schools bill, same kind of things. Those pesky home educators need controlling. Oh my God, what about the ones who slip through the net? The abuse of many, many children's names, including the latest Sarah Sharif in this ideological drive to control home education and control parents and control childhood. In actual fact, they are trying to control childhood and families, and it is just continuing. So it's just been attack after attack after attack. So it's those rumblings that were going on in 2009 when the Badman Review came out. All those rumblings are still there, and some of them have been exacerbated. They've been aided and abetted by some really pretty fictitious reporting of things.
And we know that it's never any single politician behind this.
No,
it's an ongoing agenda by those who are not elected.
Yeah, and we've got a good example. So the journalism has got worse and worse and worse, and we have a good example this morning. We might talk about it later on, if it's relevant. But Simon Squibb did an interview with ITV, and they he said to them, you know, this bill is bringing in a digital ID through a back door for children, and for some reason there's like a voiceover for the bit after that that's come from government rhetoric that basically says, no, the government say that this is not a digital ID. This is merely a unique identifying number for children that is linked to a number of databases. You know, so it still carries on. It's just awful. We can't even get decent reporting. It's dreadful.
On that specific reporting as well, in the article, they quote Ed Free. They never contacted Ed Free, and what they've done is the quotes about what we said, they've took some bits out of articles off our website, but then bearing in mind they've gone on the website obviously to take the articles to quote, they've removed a bit in the middle that talks about home education. So they quoted, then inserted homeschooling parents, then re-quoted. And they've also called us a campaign group when they've obviously been on our website, so they understand educational freedom is an information and support service. That's not a campaign group. But if you read it, it looks like they've asked us for comment because of the way they've written it. But they never contacted us in any shape or format.
Familiar,
and they've even twisted it. And
but the splicing,
and it was this one today.
Michelle, the splicing is very familiar. Didn't we have the BBC doing that to Donald Trump earlier? And that came to light earlier in the week. You know, it's identical, absolutely crappy journalism.
But if you think how many people are influenced by those things, there's a real consequence to it. And, you know, there is the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And sometimes those intentions are not that good anyway. But, you know, these are people that think they're doing good in their own sort of virtue signaling mind. But actually, they haven't gone and done the research. They haven't gone and done the homework. They haven't investigated. They haven't spoken to enough people. And it's cast a stain on all of us. And this is why we have to be more vocal. We have to get out there. We have to be willing to stand our ground on this and not allow people to slur home educators because it's unfair. You know, there was a comment on regarding the Sarah Sharif report, which came out this week. There was a comment about, all home educators should be seen because of this. Now, that is just, that leap is so huge because Sarah Sharif was seen. She was failed by at least 15 times by different local authorities, different services, but she was failed by people who knew about her. Now, Do you think going into people's homes who've got nothing, people who've done nothing wrong, do you think that's going to bring these sorts of cases to light when it's happening under teachers' noses? In many instances, in some cases, there are children who are being abused in schools, being bullied and harassed, being badly treated. And if a parent did what's happening in some of these schools, that parent would be in trouble. It's so unfair. It's unjust to tar everybody with the same brush. And this is why I get extremely angry, because it's frustrating, because everyone keeps saying, blah, blah, blah. Yes, but if you've got nothing to hide, it's not about that at all. It's not about that.
Even the other side of it, there are finite pots of money. So let's just think about it seriously here.
Yes.
That child who is at risk, if you only have so much money to do visits, do you want people visiting everyone, and that child who needs daily visits only gets a visit once a month, once every couple of months, and potentially comes to harm, whilst you're spending all this time on people who don't need that? Or let's target and ensure that child is safe and does have eyes on, because we know there's an issue there and they need the support. And if you only have so many staff and so many work, it needs to be on the children who need help, not just for the sake of, well, we might, maybe, because that actually leads to more serious harm, because those children who need the help won't get the help, because they just won't get seen, and they won't get the support services going in.
And
so
people
it actually
think
does more harm.
Well, people think new laws will fix this problem, but actually the problem is that those who have powers to act are not using those powers. Everything is in place to have protected Sarah Sharif. Everything. And there were teachers who did the right thing by reporting it. There were many people who did the right thing, trying to raise awareness to make sure that people knew something was not right. But it wasn't acted on. And we've seen this pattern in many cases. This is not the only case. So, it's that's why I feel it's just really unfair. And, that poor child, there were so many people that could have protected her. There were so many people that were aware. And, nothing was done that was of any meaningful help to her. So, I think this is why I do, as I say, I do get angry, because these kinds of things get brought out to tar home educators, when actually that's not where the problem is. The problem is within the systems, within the laws that are not being properly used. And it's just shameful. In fact, I'm going to say shame on you for using those tactics. It's abominable. So we are hoping to be joined soon by Anne Charles. Hopefully she's got the email with the link in it. And Anne will be talking a little bit about another venture that's come from some home educators, which is also named after Joy Baker, and that's called the Joy Baker Fund. So hopefully Anne will be along soon to talk to us a bit about that. I just also want to just say about home education is that I've seen so many families over the years. As I said, I've been home educating since 1998. I've met many people in different countries as well. And you see the positive impact on children. You see who they are today. And you know that there's so much positive in there. And I think for this idea that if the children are sitting in that building, they are somehow better off. We have the situation sometimes where the child is better off simply by not being in that institution. So even if the parent isn't actively providing an education, the environment the child has been in has been that bad that the child is still better off out of it.